world when it comes to influence. Thank you, Michelle Rowland. Let's go to Liberal Party's Tim Wilson joins me now. Tim, what are your thoughts on the polling numbers? You encouraged by them? Certainly the news poll number would have to provide some encouragement.
Well, the news poll clearly shows that the Prime Minister is the government's strongest asset with the public in terms of the attitude and the reception he receives and the goodwill that's given to him. It also highlights that the biggest problem the opposition has is Bill Shorten, because nobody trusts him because of his shifty and shady past. So, of course, I'm going to be encouraged by them, but it's one poll, and the real work of government is on the substance of policy delivery, including things like the budget, which is delivering tax relief to Australian households. That's the critical work.
And it's going to have a real life test, won't it, very soon in terms of that Super Saturday of by-elections and a chance to make that case. But are you satisfied with the way that the budget's been received at this point?
Well, on by-elections, I'm presuming that we're going to see a status quo result, simply because I think there'll be enough sympathy from the public about how the people who have been in this situation have been led to this situation. Now, everyone's always hopeful, but I suspect a status quo result is what's the logical outcome in each of the cases, because you'll have essentially incumbents running for their own seats over again against
even
the
in Mayo?
backdrop of public sympathy. Well, let's wait and see. I mean, I haven't seen any polling out of there, but I do think that there will always be, governments always struggle to win by-elections, and when you've got existing members of parliament contesting the same seats, that you're always going to have an uphill task to be able to win them, no matter which party they're from, and that would include if it were somebody from the government. And
Georgina Downer, your former opponent for pre-selection in the seat of Goldstein as well. Do you wish her well in that endeavour in Mayo?
I've already wished her well resolutely, directly to her, and I hope she wins. There's no problem. I absolutely hope she wins. But I do think we always have to be realistic about the chances, and so it's going to be a tough campaign. I know that Georgina will work hard and make sure she fights hard in the seat that her family has a long connection with. But I'm also a realist, which is that governments rarely win by-elections, and so every vote is going to count.
And it would boost the female representation within the coalition party room, which has been the subject of criticism over the weekend, that it remains at only 20% to female representation. And of course, this comes off the back of Jane Prentice being rolled in terms of her pre-selection. What are your thoughts on that and calls for a move towards quotas within the Liberal Party?
Well, yes, if Georgina won Mayo, it would boost the number of women in Parliament, and that would be a fundamentally good thing on the Liberal side of politics. But I'm against quotas on a practical level, because quotas work when you have a very rigid factional system where you can allocate out positions and everybody takes responsibility for making sure those quotas aren't filled. In the Liberal Party, we have this thing called democracy, where party members get to make decisions based on what they think is in the best interests of their community as the candidates they put up, who then go on and contest elections and win or lose. But make no mistake about it, I'm resolutely in favour of seeing more women enter Parliament. I would like to see more women enter Parliament. I also believe that every woman who's already there, should be absolutely supported in staying in Parliament, as well, of course, of finding new people as well.
So that obviously refers to Jane Hume, a Liberal senator and regular on this particular news channel, but she apparently under threat for her pre-selection from the right within the Liberal Party in Victoria. You'd urge the Prime Minister to intervene if there were any threat to her pre-selection for the Senate?
Well, my comments reflect on every single woman in the Federal Parliamentary Liberal Party, and I back all my colleagues to be re-elected. That's a pretty standard position from an incumbent member of Parliament. You support your colleagues, and it's a sensible one at that, particularly somebody for those who are doing a stellar job. But ultimately, these are decisions for the party.
And when it comes to Senator Hume, is it true that there are elements of the party that want her gone in terms of the pre-selection?
I don't actually know the answer to that question. There are always people talking up different scenarios one way or the other. There's a difference between talk and action. And as I said, I'll be supporting my parliamentary colleagues, all of them, to be re-elected at the next federal election.
Finally, your thoughts on this story I touched on with Michelle Rowland and that report in the Financial Review regarding chequebook diplomacy. And it's obviously something that's been happening for quite some time, with various neighbours of ours in the Pacific racking up huge amounts of debt to China.
Yeah, and it's something that's of concern to a lot of us, I think, in Parliament generally, on both sides of the political aisle, because what you're seeing is the foreign aid project of other countries being used, obviously, to advance development aims and interests in the Pacific Islands, but let's not try and pretend otherwise. It's also seen as an opportunity to advance soft power or influence in the region. That's not uncommon with aid programs, and it reminds us why we have to be very clear in our intent in working with our Pacific Island neighbours to make sure that they can stand on their own 2 feet as part of a concert of democracies across Southeast Asia, so that we have a region which is built on many powers, not just on a singular power. And I know this is something of concern, as I said, to everybody in politics. And I think, say for instance, the developments recently in Malaysia are an interesting and important development in countries asserting their democratic traditions and making sure that they feel confident and optimistic to express themselves as a nation, but also in a region where we need that degree of diversity and influence.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation right now in terms of the foreign policy debate, in the sense, Tim Wilson, that we got this concern about that assertiveness of China on the one hand, but the budget last week so dependent upon Chinese growth and our economic ties with that giant of North Asia as well. So that's that parallel, that balance that needs to be struck.
Well, that's what happens when you have free and open economies. Everybody becomes mutually supportive of each other. It's Australia's economy and its prosperity. Is it linked to China's prosperity? Absolutely. Just like China's prosperity is linked to their own prosperity as well. So it's in everybody's interest to have free and open markets, to grow the economies across the whole of Southeast Asia. But we also need to make sure that we're a strong and confident nation, that we're obviously going to do what's in our national interest, as well as helping other countries stand up for their national interest as well.
Tim Wilson, appreciate that. We'll talk to you soon. A quick break back.